It's been a couple of days, so it must be time to talk about David Moyes and his future at West Ham. I mean, look, it's a subject that's just been rumbling, isn't it? Rumbling and rumbling on for so long. Will he, won't he stay? Is he going to get a deal? Is he not? Even the manager himself doesn't seem to know. The amount of times he's come out and said, yeah, I'm about to sign it. It's all agreed. And then all of a sudden he's changed his mind. There's a lot of confusion surrounding the future of David Moyes. And with that, it does sort of enable media outlets, to basically make up stuff about it, aren't they? Because it can kind of, you can go, can't you? Oh, look, David Moyes is going to stay. We're hearing David Moyes is staying. Oh, we're hearing David Moyes is leaving. It's like it's an easy story to keep sort of just throwing out there, However, the reason I'm here talking about it again for the the 98th time, in the last month, is because there has been actually some developments on his future. And it's quite significant, I think, actually. And the reason being, I think it's significant is because it's come from a few sources. It's not come from one. It's not a Daily Star, gossip little column saying David Moyes is going to leave. It's sort of come from pretty credible sources, and it's all kind of around the same time. From a West Ham way point of view, i.e. from ex-WHU employee, the message has always been pretty clear in regards to David Moyes' future, in that the club will decide at the end of the season. The club are not going to make any final decision on David Moyes until the end of the season, whether to offer him a new deal or not. And there's also the decision sitting with David Moyes. If David Moyes want to sign, he might not want to. So that's always been the kind of the West Ham way view of this, and I don't really think much has changed in regards to that. However, there has been some sort of noises now, as I say, from various sort of sources around in the media, suggesting that David Moyes has actually, in fact, made up his mind in terms of his future at West Ham and whether he wants to stay or not. Now, I struggle to completely believe that David Moyes has completely made it. I'm 100% leaving or I'm 100% staying. I struggle to believe that because we don't know what we're going to be. If let's just say, the reason I say this, right? Imagine David Moyes has announced to everyone, I'm leaving West Ham. Yeah, I'm definitely going to leave. I've had enough. And then we go and win the Europa League. Let's just say we did it, all right? I'm not saying we will, but let's just imagine, just imagine for 1 minute, all right, the West Ham go win the Europa League. Well, we're European champions. We're good at it. We know what we're doing. Let's just say that happens. Is he going to walk away next then in the summer? I don't think so. Well, he's going to turn down managing the Champions League? No. So I struggle to believe that David Moyes has absolutely made a decision on his future. However, according to, as I say, a few sources, and one of them is Darmesh. Of course, Darmesh is a friend of the West Ham way. He's been doing stuff on Patreon, and he will be doing it again for the summer transfer window. And always thinks he's a really good friend. I speak to him quite regularly. He's a really lovely fella, from Sky Sports. And he said the following regarding David Moyes. If David Moyes decides to leave, it wouldn't be surprising to see someone like Tim Steidten exploring the European market and possibly bringing in a manager well-versed in the structure of a European football teams, complete with a sporting director and a structured approach. This contrasts with the more traditional managerial style that David Moyes embodies, where he prefers greater control over recruitment matters, a control he has largely enjoyed during his second stint in East London, West Ham. Given West Ham's shift to a more European model, this decision will likely carry considerable weight, with Tim Steidten likely to be at the forefront of it. So he's basically talking about the structure of next season and how things are going to be likely to be set up in regards to how West Ham operate now. It is quite clear for all of us, isn't it? Let's be honest. Tim Steidten, this is now going to be his time. My gut feeling is that David Moyes will not be our manager next season. I don't believe he will. I think that the club deep down wants to make a bit of a change. I think Tim Steidten would like to make a change. I think David Moyes possibly would like to. As I say, that could really change depending on how things pan out the rest of the season. If David Moyes gets European qualification, let's forget Champions League for a minute. Let's just forget the European, us winning the Europa League. If David Moyes even gets the Europa Conference League, I wouldn't be surprised if he would like to stay. That's my gut feeling on it, but it's whether West Ham would want him to stay, whether that's enough for them to go, we're going to offer you a new deal. I don't know. I think it's a great argument for him to say, well, look, what more do you want? I've given you European football again. But according to reports, okay, it's being reported that David Moyes is going to leave West Ham at the end of the season, that he's had enough and that he feels undervalued, underappreciated at the club and just feels that the time is right for him to move on. I don't think there's many West Ham fans that disagree with that in terms of that view. Maybe it's time to move on. Maybe it's time for a change. And I'm not having a go at David Moyes here. I think he's been a brilliant manager for West Ham. Forget the style of football and the academy stuff and all these and treatment of certain players. Just park all that for a bit. I'm just talking about results. I'm talking about, what's on paper. This is what we've done. This is what we've achieved under the manager. He's up there with one of the greatest managers of all time at the club. Let's get it straight. That is true. As I say, forget the style of football stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the sort of facts. We haven't had this kind of level of success and I would say dominance is not the right word, but you know what I mean? Like consistency in terms of being challenging at the right ends of the table and stuff and doing well. We haven't had that for a long, long time. Certainly not in the Premier League. Well, yeah, you know what I mean? In general, we haven't, certainly not my lifetime and many others. So I think that's quite fair to say that he has been a really, really good manager for West Ham. But I think as well, it's evident, as I've said earlier, in terms of Tim Steidten and the way the club is now structured, that there's a feeling that change is probably coming, that possibly David Moyes' time at the club is coming to an end. I do think they want a more like Starmash just said, a more European model, more structured approach in terms of having a head coach working under Tim Steidten, obviously the sort of director of football role, where he would be in charge firmly of the recruitment process. And the reason that these clubs do that is because what they can do is say, I'm going to set up a model of this style of football with this style of player, with this kind of age of player. I want this kind of player. And then what you do is you then go and get the manager, or i.e. the head coach, that would suit that style. And then if it doesn't work out, you then only need to take that manager out and go, I'm going to go and get another manager that suits that style. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you go to get a manager like a David Moyes that wants to do everything his own way, if he then leaves and you go to get a manager that is got the same sort of ilk and same mindset of that, you then have to basically look to change the whole squad to suit the new manager. Whereas the other model, i.e. the more modern approach, you don't have to do that. So it makes sense, okay? And I don't know. I just get the feeling that when I think of David Moyes now in his time at West Ham, I struggle to see him here next season. As I say, unless, of course, we do go on to achieve something really special this one, then maybe then I would probably see him staying just because he'd want to carry on and experience it, etc., etc. It's whether, though, it's enough for West Ham. But according to the model, though, according to the reports, David Moyes is looking to move on from West Ham, that he fancies a change. David Moyes is going to have a host of options to him. There's not many clubs out there that wouldn't take David Moyes on. I'm not saying the top clubs, your Arsenal, Cities, of course not. Of course not. They're not going to be looking at David Moyes. But pretty much everyone outside the big six, and sort of maybe a couple of sides, maybe sort of play different styles of football, maybe your Brightons and Newcastle, maybe not so much, but pretty much every other Premier League team would be, I'm sure, happy to have David Moyes as their manager after what he's achieved at West Ham. I'm sure they are, but it's quite evident that the fan base as a whole probably fancy a change now, see a different style of football, want to see more academy progression, i.e. players being given more opportunity. And not having so much of a disjointed structure when it comes to recruitment, because we do seem to have that. We're seeing it, aren't we, now? Look at the Calvin Phillips thing. That was not a Tim Steidten appointment. That was a David Moyes appointment. You've seen Tim Steidten's appointments. We've seen Mohamed Kudus. We've seen Edson Alvarez. We've seen these sort of appointments. And then we're then seeing David Moyes. Look, I'm not saying that David Moyes' signs have been bad. They haven't been, not all of them at all. James Ward-Prowse has been a great sign for West Ham. And that was a David Moyes appointment. David Moyes wanted Harry Maguire. Let's be honest, if we had got Maguire from how he's performed this season, he would have been great for West Ham, I'm sure. So I'm not saying that it's all bad, but it's just disjointed. You can see there's sort of like we're going for one model and then another. It's all very topsy-turvy. So I do see a change coming, but it's hard to say for certain, isn't it? Because we just don't know where this season's going to end up. But it does appear that, according to the reports, that David Moyes is now considering leaving the club, seriously, and is looking for other options. And I don't blame him. As part of me, I kind of don't blame him now. I imagine that he probably fancies the change and going elsewhere. Yeah, it's going to make an interesting summer. This is a story that's going to rumble. It's going to keep going on and on and on. But I do think that we do want to focus on the rest of the season. It would be great, wouldn't it, for David Moyes to end on a high? Wouldn't it be great for him to walk away and go, I've given you a European qualification or another trophy? Can you imagine that? Be amazing. But if he does, as I say, if David Moyes, did deliver us the European trophy again, and got us to the Champions League, then I'm pretty sure he won't go. But my gut says this is his last season.